Hey guys, it's been almost a year since we founded the National Justice Party. We held our first meeting during the unprecedented political emergency of the 2020 riots. You guys remember that, huh? So much has changed politically since then that it's becoming even more apparent that the American empire is starting to lose its grip on the narrative, as well as starting to crumble. Riots in major cities, violent crime at record levels is the new normal. Even far-left news orgs, and I say this sort of with a grain of salt, like NPR, they had to cover how bad things are, how bad things have gotten. They have to do damage control. In reality, everyone knows that years of anti-white narratives being pushed and unarmed blacks being killed by the police, the whole bit, that's led to a chilling effect in, law enforcement, and it's also making criminals feel like they can actually go out and do whatever the hell they want. Do you think that NPR covered anything like that? Do you think they talked about, black criminals, anything? No, you don't? All right, well, I was surprised. They actually tried to steer the conversation to a really system-approved, safe direction. They tried to make it about, and this is really funny to me, they tried to make it about COVID lockdowns. Now, that was interesting because I never knew that places like Chicago, Baltimore, St. Louis, New Orleans, I never knew they'd been suffering with COVID lockdowns for like decades. My entire life it's been going, I didn't know that. I thought it was fascinating. And only certain areas, only certain parts of the city. You know the ones. Don't make me say it. That's right, the places with bad schools. If only they socially distance. If they had more money for those programs, it'd be perfectly fine. So we had one of the most, if not the most, contentious election in my lifetime, certainly ever. We had two of the most tone-deaf campaigns I've ever seen. We had, what do we have? We had riots, lockdowns, the economy tanked. Did they talk about any of that? No, they wanted to let more and more blacks out of jail. They wanted to see who could give blacks more money. That's the whole bit. That was the whole thing. And if you turn on right-wing TV or radio right now, you can hear about how actually it's China controlling America, right? Yes. But check this out. I looked it up. Turns out it's true. They're right. I looked up who was actually in Beijing Biden's cabinet. So we've got Yellen, Garland, Klain, Mayorkas, Blinken, Cohen, just to name a few. But that's proof that the Chinese are very, very sneaky because they all pick Jewish names to throw you off their scent. That's clever. It's not bad. So, what's funny about all the anti-Chinese rhetoric to me is that this is obviously the GOP just trying to divert. They want you not to be paying attention to any domestic issues. They want you instead looking outward always. Because if you take a look inside, things are obviously bad. They're getting worse and they'll continue to get worse. It's exactly like what the left did with Russia. And both serve the same purpose. It's to misdirect any time a conversation about power and ethnic minorities come up. They'd rather you be talking about Russia, China than... I forget who the other guys are. What are they? I don't know. What I find not so funny is that the government here is actually nearly as oppressive and in some ways worse than that of China. Worse. Objectively. I was trying to be, give them some leeway, but it's worse.
Gay Afro-Zionist Empire. Gays.
That was initially the title of my speech. I gave it away.
Down with gays. Down with gays.
I think someone's been drinking. Do you think that the Chinese people get deplatformed, doxxed, fired, removed from the financial system for advocating for their people? I don't think they do. China even actually imprisons and punishes, I'm not going to get into it, but they punish billionaires when they break the law. Can you even conceive of that in America? Like a billionaire ever being punished? Here in America, our billionaires, we have people like the Sacklers. You all know about them. I don't know what that guy said, but I agree. But they knowingly flooded the country with opioids, the most addictive, soul-destroying drug there is. Like, it just, chemically, it literally is the worst thing you can do. Not only did they knowingly do it, but they thought it was funny. I think a lot of the people here, and probably some of the people listening, they've seen those emails that leaked from Purdue Pharma and some of the, a couple insurance companies. Couldn't remember when I was doing my research. But, they were making jokes and deriding all the people, all the addicts, as pillbillies, just really talking down to these people. These are people suffering. These are people that are suffering at their hands. They knew what they were doing. Further down in the emails, a director of an insurance company actually described Kentucky as OxyContinville. That's all they saw it as. One of them even said that the pillbillies must have learned how to read because they actually passed restrictions on the law. So they don't really hold you in very high regard. So what happened to them, though? They probably got punished pretty severely. That's pretty wild stuff. You can't just do that. You can't kill 500,000 people and then joke about it, right? I don't know. But what really happened is they were given a slap on the wrist. They said, "Oh, sorry, didn't mean to do that." They paid a comparatively small fine and got to keep most of their money, actually. Most of their money was offshore, and they're just, "Whoa, what can we do? We can't do anything about that." But yeah, they caused the death of, it was nearly 500,000 people. They profited off the pain and death of hundreds of thousands. Nothing happened. Nobody cared. Nobody cared. Media, they talked about it, but it didn't really go anywhere, So, I don't bring China up to shill for them. I know I'm already going to be accused of being a China shill, or a Duganist. Listen, I'd hate to be featured on NJP Exposed. Don't do it. If they're here, I don't want to hear it. I do it because we shouldn't be baited. We shouldn't let ourselves be tricked into reactionary points when the real problems are domestic. They're here. We actually have people at home destroying this country. It's not China, it's not Russia. We know who it is. So there's millions of Americans that believe the last election was stolen. And at this point, it doesn't really matter to what degree, if it was, if it wasn't. Nothing's going to change. The narrative's out there, and nobody's going to change their mind. The thing is that this challenges the legitimacy of the system. And as a response, we're at the beginning of the biggest intelligence op against the American citizenry in history, ever. The crackdown on speech and organization is being justified by the myth of white domestic terror and the hyperbolic reaction to what happened on January 6th.
Yes.
They kept all the ropes in the gallery perfectly fine, but oh my God, it was a raid. Can you believe it? So some people actually had some pushback for us, for our stance on January 6th. I kind of wanted to clarify that a little. Just because these people were there on behalf of the Stop the Steal grift, and it was a grift. Like, we all understand that. They were there for a grift. There was a president that didn't support us, didn't support them. The country doesn't even represent them anymore. It doesn't mean that those people were bad people, though.
That's right.
They might be gullible, yeah. Yeah. But more accurately, instead of gullible, they were desperate. Think about how much this country's changed in just the last 5 years. And it's been jarring even for us, and we're people in the know. We know who's doing it, we know why. So imagine if you grew up in a real America, and a lot of these people grew up in a time when America wasn't that bad. The cracks were there and all the seeds were planted, but you could grow up and have a good life. You had expectations that your children's life would be better than yours. These people grew up with American exceptionalism. It was taught in schools. That's what they believed. So by design, they've basically been given no coping mechanism for what's happening in the country that they knew and loved. And can you blame them for grasping at straws? I don't.
No.
Even though they likely would do all they could to distance themselves right now. Like all those people, those are the real racists. Like, we're not those guys. Of course, that's what they do. But that's what they've been told to do. I don't think that means that we should condemn them to prison and torture like Bigot, or murder at the hands of Zog like Ashley Babbitt.
Yes.
And free Bigot, yes. I think we've mentioned that in nearly every speech, but yes, free Bigot. The fact that Ashley Babbitt was shot and bled to death for a cause that ultimately wasn't even real one that never for a moment fought for anything she believed in. It actually makes me kind of sick. That's a very, I don't know what the feeling is, but it's not a good one. It's unfair, it's cruel, but the thing is that we have the ability to take their betrayal and anger and turn it to hope.
Yes.
We can actually build a movement and give those people something for the first time in their lives. Thank you. They might not be with us now, but they will be.
Yes.
And these are our people, and we're the only ones in the entire country that will ever, ever, ever represent them. Nobody cares. We shouldn't forget that. So this spring, Americans were given round-the-clock coverage of Derek Chauvin trial. That was pretty nice, huh? So most assumed that it would go exactly the way that it did, which I think is pretty silly. Like that's the expectation you have for justice in America. It's people saying, "Oh, well, he's going to be found guilty," and we all know why. The trial was obviously mock, and we all knew that. It was a very faint boo, and I agree. So some offered the cope that, it'll keep people from rioting. That's something, right?
Cowards!
Cowards, yes, they're absolutely cowards.
We need a white riot! Yeah!
Well, now to the average person's credit, they actually know that it's naive to expect justice in a country that boards up, the windows on every single business and home within 10 miles of a courthouse every time it's in operation. It's pretty goofy. Now, despite there being a ton of exonerating evidence to Chauvin, he literally didn't do anything wrong. He was found guilty of second-degree and third-degree murder, as well as manslaughter, which means he meant to kill George Floyd, but also accidentally killed him. And you can figure that out. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know what that means. So even if by some miracle Chauvin was found not guilty, by a jury that was pulled from the overwhelmingly left-leaning Hennepin County in the city of Minneapolis, where all the riots happened, even if the jury hadn't been subjected to a year of outrageous, over-the-top propaganda about what happened, and even if the jury didn't have BLM activists sitting on it, the DOJ still had plans to arrest him immediately. If there was a not guilty verdict, he was going to be arrested in the courthouse because of civil rights violations. It's a good system. It's really good. It's working out. The thing is that makes me wonder what will happen for Kyle Rittenhouse. That's another person absolutely did nothing wrong. A young man defended himself from violent anarchists. Well, what's the jury going to do? Again, we all probably know. Isn't someone in power on our side? You guys know.
No.
Look at our elected officials. Look at the GOP and who they cater to. If you aren't gay, trans, a shade of brown, they don't want anything to do with you. And they tell you this. That was actually, after the last election, they were bragging about how many brown people and gay people they got to vote for them. But they lost. What was the point?
Yeah.
That is the point.
That is the point. So who's that leave out, though? And that leaves us out. Normal people, white people. So anybody listening to this that might not be completely on our page, do you think Bruce Jenner, Caitlyn Jenner, whatever, is going to represent you? No! I don't think so. I don't know if that's the best precedent to say. You're putting up the tranny now. That's the way. So what about the next generation of Republicans? Maybe they're better, right? The young ones? No, I'd say they're even worse. The Youth Outreach Wing of the GOP, which is TPUSA, recently invited a porn star. That's right. They recently invited a porn star named Brandy Love to come to one of their conferences. Now, hey, hold on. Yeah, and oh, really? I didn't even know that.
She is.
Wow, fascinating. Now, maybe in their defense, they thought it would play better to their audience than Charlie Kirk's pet gay, Dave Smith, that guy that he brought around a couple years ago. Maybe it did, I don't know. Nothing says American conservative like gay blacks and old porn stars. Actually, that's true. Actually, that might be true. So the American right is so desperate to look what they consider hip to young people. They're willing to sink to any depths to prove they're just as liberal, if not more liberal, than any Democrat. Something in their minds is telling them that pushing anti-whiteness, pro-tranny, pro-homosexual propaganda, even to children, they're telling them that owns the libs. I don't know that it does. It's honestly pathetic. So do you want to support a party that's only interested in keeping up with the Jonestones? No! Now, I made a joke a few years ago about, said that the GOP, and this was so far in the future, I thought this would never happen, said that the GOP would probably put up a fat, black, crippled dyke as their candidate. We might see that soon. We'll see, 2024, I mean, there's time. Yeah, we'll work on it. I mean, that is a little oppressive, those categories. We'll work on it. Now, none of you guys want to hear this, but we really should spend less time trying to own the libs.
Smash them!
Oh, there's that. We don't need to waste our energy explaining our points to people that will never, ever care. And that's my message for the GOP supporters. Like, what are you doing? Come on, they're not going to listen to you. They have no reason to. They're in power. They don't need to listen to a thing you say. You're not going to win. So the momentary dopamine rush that you get making a blue-haired, mentally ill weirdo on the internet mad doesn't really translate to anything. There's no win. There's nothing. It's just it's a fleeting thing. You know, if they're in power and you're just upsetting like some sort of peon, what does it matter? Like, what happens the next day? Does anything change? I don't really think it does. Now, here's the thing that the left does, though. They don't put any effort into explaining a thing, not a thing to you. Nothing. They don't have to do it. They just move on. They do it. And that's really what we should do. We should just be ruthlessly pushing our agenda on everyone. Not to liberals. The thing is that this is simple. We're right and they're wrong. That's really all we need to know. Reach the people you can. We'll own the libs when we win. Now, I spoke with someone recently he's sort of adjacent to these circles. He's not completely on board. But he asked if our messaging was family friendly. I said, well, yeah, of course. Like, that's kind of the whole bit, you know. We want to support families. We want to have more families. That's what we're going for. I showed him our platform, and he liked what he saw, but he had a problem. He told me he's concerned there might be racial slurs used in meetings. Can you imagine? Can you imagine something like that? He told me, and this isn't a joke, he continued to say that his grandmother wouldn't feel comfortable with something like that, so maybe it wasn't actually the right path. You know? Look, Granny's probably nice, but, you know, I don't know. Maybe we should look to the future. Oh, yeah. Grandma's probably dropped some pretty hard language in her day, I will say. So he suggested that we do really stuff that's been tried a million times, like try to infiltrate the GOP. Do complete absurd, like BioShock Infinite. That's kind of a dumb reference. But BioShock Infinite aesthetics, you know, the Hail Columbia stuff. And it's just like, hasn't this been done? Like, has this worked ever? And what's the point?
No more conservatives.
No more conservatives. We're not doing that. But I was thunderstruck. I was thunderstruck by it, to be honest. I probably look like a dummy because I didn't even have anything to say. I was like, okay. It was just goofy. So conservatives, like this guy, like they're willing to sit idly by and let the country become South Africa or worse because they're afraid to make certain people in their lives uncomfortable. You know, fighting back would be worse than being crushed by the left, right? That's goofy, and people need to get over that. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. Sitting in the middle ground and trying to play both sides, being a fence sitter, arguing about what symbols we should use, like what clever tricks of phrase we can use to like secretly convert people to this stuff.
Bully conservative.
That's goofy. And yes, bully conservatives. I'm getting a lot of good feedback right here. You know, while you sit around on a Telegram group or some archaic forum arguing about this stuff, to people that are already on your team or feds, I don't know, every day it's one day closer to our destruction. And I mean that literally, our abject destruction. Any time wasted, it's a sin. It's silly. Do not waste time on this stuff. The focus group nationalists. And now I gave away my line. I call these people focus group nationalists. That's all they're doing. They're sitting around debating. It's absurd. There's actually this book. I think it was written in like the 20s. Talked about this movements becoming like a debating society. I forget who made it. Some painter. It's not bad. It's not bad. I've heard of it. But you know, they just think that this is what's going to happen like that. Just something will click. Like you'll have drawn like the perfect shape, the perfect shade of some color, and that'll just instantly people. Flip will switch. They'll just be on our team. We'll win tomorrow. But there's nothing that actually reaches masses more than the truth delivered honestly and with conviction. That is it. That is absolutely it. So, I became a father earlier this year. This is my first. He was over there. Thank you. The thing is, and everybody says this and it's sort of cliche, but it's true. When you have a kid, things do change. You actually do think about things differently. And when I didn't have a kid, I was like, yeah, right, I'm always going to be the exact same guy. What are you talking about? But it matters. It actually changes. And if I don't give everything I can to fight this beast system that we live under, this brutal regime, I'd be failing. And basically, I would have doomed my child. We need to give more.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. So if I don't sacrifice my time, my money, and ultimately even my security, I'd really be sacrificing her future. That's what I'm giving up. And I'm not going to do that. None of us should do that for our kids. The cost of all of our weakness, our combined weakness, will be paid by her and every other child in this room. Like, you should think about that. Every time you waste time, if you get into just dumb arguments, you're wasting time, you don't want to do the bit, think about that child. Like, they're going to live in a worse country than you. Hands down, far worse. Don't let that happen. If things aren't intolerable for you now, what's it going to take? You know, I worry that by the time these people feel like they're ready to take a risk and speak out, it's going to be too late. You know, that's something I honestly, like, I worry about that. Anytime I see this type of stuff, like, what are you doing? It's literally the current year. And you're arguing about this nonsense. Like, what are we doing? Even trying to find, like, these clever tricks and, like, we're going to find this back door into the GOP. Which, the GOP always finds a back door, if you know what I mean. Boo Lindsey Graham. So people have it in their mind that history operates in cycles. To some degree, that's true. But they also have this idea that there's some sort of a great societal pendulum, you know, and it's always going to swing back. You know, you don't even have to do anything. It gets so far, and it just naturally it swings right back, and you know, we'll have a fascist America, you know, Ines will just be in charge. That's how we'll do it, right? No, that's insane. That's stupid. Politics operates with inertia. That's it. Nothing's going to change anything that we do or anything that's happening unless we change it, unless we stop it. Thank you. And the thing is that if we all unite and work together and help build what we're doing, if we do what we do right here, and each time it grows, if you tell people about this, if you share these videos, if this reaches more and more people, this message will spread.
Yes.
We'll be able to stop the pendulum, and we'll force it back in the right direction, and we will win. Hail victory.